Welcome to the Sales Confidence podcast. My name's James Ski. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Confidence. Our vision is to build the world's most valuable B2B sales community. And we want to help sales leaders and salespeople at each stage of their career with their mindset, well-being, and performance. We use this podcast to interview not only world-class sales leaders, but actually the founders that are producing technology that's impacting the sales profession. And I'm really excited with our guest today. We've got Mick, who is the CEO, right, of JointFlows, and he's had a stellar career as a sales leader. So we've kind of got two sides of the fence today. You know, we've got someone that's actually built sales organizations and scaled businesses, and now actually moved into the startup where all the graft and hustle really is, and we will get into that. And I'm looking forward to this conversation today. So just to kick things off, my icebreaker kind of question is, what are you excited about today?
Well, thank you for having me first. I'm excited to be here to start with, and I'm excited about the future, really, from a JointFlows viewpoint. I think there's a big opportunity for the whole sales world, the whole sales category to be a little bit better at what they do, to be a little bit more predictable, and to work with like scaling in mind. And there's been a lot of layoffs, as we know, and I think it's a little bit of a burnout mentality, which we are trying to change one client at a time. But so far, so good. So excited to make an impact, excited to measure it, and then excited to be successful and work together with you to do that. I'm
looking forward to it. And, we will get into kind of the technology that you've built and the impact that it's having on sales teams, because I think it's come at a critical time in helping businesses scale, especially with efficiency drives that are needed. So we will get into that. Just before we do, it'd be good to learn a bit more about you as an individual and your journey, your story. What's the first thing you typically think of when you wake up in the morning?
So I've got two kids, right? So the first thing I do when I wake up is I'm thinking about what we're going to do for breakfast and then how long is it going to take, then do the school run, and hopefully the school run doesn't overlap with my first meetings. So efficiency play right from the start. And then we're trying to put our best foot forward and work as quickly and productively as possible in what we do. As a founder, you're juggling with a lot of topics, from marketing to support, product, sales, PR, everything like that. So you could quickly get lost into doing things that are inefficient or that don't move the needle that much, or you can't measure. So not everything needs to be measured, but yeah, there are things that are time wasting activities. So when we get started, we usually have a stand-up kind of with the co-founding team to understand what is a priority. Eat the frog, basically. Start with the most important topics, things that will either increase our revenue or increase the valuation of the company. So like short-term or mid-term, long-term games. And then we get going until midday, lunchtime, if we do get to have lunch. And then we round up again, and then we decide what we do in the afternoon.
Great. Where did your inspiration come for this particular business?
To be honest, I started thinking about it and building a software to help solve my own issues. The problem I had was, as you were moving the deals through the stages, it became more and more complex to understand what was going on. There was a lot of deal slippage, unexpected deal slippage, and I was turning, as an individual contributor, into a project manager, which I had no competency for. I knew from experience what to do as I went along, but I landed a job in enterprise sales and I didn't know how to project manage, and there was no solution to help me do that. And then the problem kind of got bigger as I was leading a team, because then I was project managing a set of opportunities with time frames in mind, obviously with quarters and annual targets to be met, and it was just a massive mess, really. So started building a solution, a project management tool to help me essentially push those complex deals over the line.
Did you code it yourself?
No, so we used an external agency. So we did an RFP. Well, I did an RFP, and then I tried to find out how much it would cost to do so. and it was quite cost efficient given how much time I was actually spending doing it manually. So like the barrier for creating a new technology nowadays is quite low. Like there's no code tools. There's quite a lot of developers that you can hire in freelance mode. So it was cost efficient. It was worth the investment. And then I realized moving into different companies that the problem was worse as you were getting bigger. So like £100 million AR companies working on spreadsheets to kind of orchestrate, the workload. And that's when the penny dropped a little bit. I was like, okay, there's a big opportunity here to actually get that tool to the rest of the market and kind of become the solution for the gap that we're seeing, which is you don't have essentially project management salespeople doing a good job at it. So deal slippage.
Okay. Well, we're going to dig deeper into that, but it's good to hear like where that moment of inspiration came from, like from your personal experience. Just around your sales career background, like what was your first experience of sales?
So I didn't know it was a sales role, but my dad was a sales person selling wine to grocery stores. And I was 15 and I was like, I need someone standing in the store and actually saying, hey, try this and then have a sample of that, have a sample of this to then sell a box of wine bottles. And I really liked it. And actually, my dad came back in the evening to pick me up. I couldn't drive, obviously, 15 years old. And there was no more boxes left. And I was like, how did you do that? I don't know. I just like chatted to people, really. And then that's how I kind of got the taste for it. And then I ended up doing a sports career. So I used to be a professional gymnast. So that took me away from like the traditional type of work. And at the end of my career, I felt like it was just natural to go back into something I really enjoyed. So I started my career, my actual career as an SDR manager, AE manager, VP, and then founder now.
Nice. You've done the full journey, and I can relate. I didn't quite reach your standard of sportsmanship, but I had that sporting background, and like I've been on that journey from SDR, AE leader to founder, and to be honest, I wish more salespeople consider it as an opportunity. I think, I don't know if you can agree here, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but it strikes me that, one of the great things about sales is you can earn good money. And you're often out earning your peers in a company. And I think it gets really hard, therefore, for a salesperson or a sales leader to go and start up their own business because they're walking away from a much larger package. If you're, not to say that developers aren't high earners, but they're on a fixed base, they often can kind of transition a lot more easier. Has it been hard, that transition, from being a kind of, high earner to being a founder in the early days is not as easy?
Yeah, it has been hard. And I'm the sole income in my family as well. So I was making good money. And for that reason, my partner doesn't have to work and I've got 2 kids. So when I transitioned and I did that full time starting in January, I went down to like the bare minimum in terms of salary. And it was very scary because, you kind of have the self-belief that this is going to work. But at the same time, you've got that voice in your head, which says, hey, you've got a family, you've got a mortgage, like all the risks that are attached to that. So I think the advice I would give to people trying to get into that journey is, before you go full time, try it as a side gig. And if it starts picking up, it doesn't mean that you get to a point where you're paid for it, like it covers the costs. But if you got traction and if you've got people willing to actually invest a little bit of money, I think doing it for free is a mistake. But they're willing to give you a go for a token amount that helps you get a budget line and give you feedback that you can then rely on, is good enough to get started.
I agree. I do feel like getting those proof points is good for your confidence before you take the plunge, especially when you've got responsibility. But it's encouraging that you could see the potential in what you're doing. And so on that journey, before you become a founder, like SDR, AE leader, What do you think made you successful? You know, if I asked your peers or like people that have worked with you, like, and I was like, you know, what is it about Mick that makes him so successful? What would they say?
So I think two things. I think the first thing is delayed gratification. I don't actually care how long it takes to be successful, and I'm willing to go through it almost blindly. And for some people, it seems quite crazy to do that, and I can do that for a very, very long time. And I think that comes from sports. You know, it's like, okay, if you want to reach that end goal, you might be like 6-10 years away from it. So if you look at your success on a monthly basis, then it's just like you're never gonna get there. So I can get into that pain cycle and stay in there for a very long time, that discomfort zone. And the second thing is, and again, I don't know if it's very healthy, but I fear of failure. So my fuel is the amount of failures I've had or people telling me I couldn't do it. So I love being the underdog. I've done that in my sports career as well. Or like, side story, but I was rejected for entering the national center as a gymnast because I didn't have spatial awareness. So you need to do when you do like skill stuff as a gymnast, right? And I kept on going. And then 10 years later, I was the most skilled from a spatial and awareness viewpoint, like giving lessons to coaches how to teach it. And then I think that's the mindset I've got is, all right, well, let me prove you wrong, basically. And the more I get it, not too much, because then obviously you also want to have some successes, but the more that fuels me.
That's good. That's good resiliency there. So let's get on to JointFlows, right? That's like clearly a very exciting time now in your life, but also for the industry. So just give us an insight into you know, what is the core of the business, what problem you're trying to solve, and who you're helping.
Yeah, so we solve predictability issues for revenue teams. And what we help them do is the outcome is less revenue slippage, whether that revenue slippage is pre-signature or post-signature. So we accelerate all the sales processes essentially significantly through automation and orchestration. And what we essentially do is we help revenue teams get more control and visibility into what they're doing once the deals are being progressed. If you look at your typical CRM tools, you rely on stages within a funnel, and there's typically like 5 or 7 stages in a sales process, whether it's a renewal or an expansion or a new logo deal. And then when you look at the modern B2B buying journey, you've got 70 milestones, 26 stakeholders, tens of documents to review, procurement, legal, they're all disconnected, they all don't speak to one another. And you're trying to kind of materialize that into a 6 steps process, which obviously is not gonna work. So you've got stages in your funnel which can last 6-7 months to go through. Oh, I've been stuck in legal, it's in negotiation. How long have you been in there for? 9 months. Okay, so is this stage quite accurate? Like, because the way you look at it from a CRM viewpoint is you've got all your deals in that one stage, but some of them could be 5% through that stage, and others could be at 95% through that stage, and the difference in time could be 16 months. So you don't get much in terms of learning where you actually are. So you then rely on deal reviews, pipeline reviews, like time-consuming activities to get to an understanding of where things are. And what we've built is essentially a way to materialize that complex B2B buying journey so that you don't rely on a stage, but you rely on what we call revenue funnel or revenue milestone progressions. And it's much more accurate. It's feeding on real data as opposed to your rep entering the data they want into the CRM and then extrapolating that. There's no like weight to like the stages in Salesforce that we use is literally based on real facts. And it's much easier because salespeople don't have to do project management. They're not technically skilled for that. And deals happen faster. And if they don't, then we know that they are not going to happen. So in terms of predictability, it's much, much better.
And what's been like the reaction from people that get it?
So when they get it, they get it. And because I think we're in a in a very comfortable position being salespeople, having founded and created a sales technology and starting it as an internal tool as well, which is, I think, the key here is, okay, this is what we've used and this is how we've used it. Therefore, here are the use cases. And everybody's struggling with slippage. Some want to admit it, others are a little bit more reluctant to face it, but it's really hard to progress opportunities for the reasons that we know, like CFOs get involved and that there's way more due diligence around making a purchase. People have overspent. RevOps is getting like flooded with integrations and requests and all of that. So the pain is there and the message resonates because that's our story, basically. And now it's early days, so it's really a matter of finding the right people as opposed to personas that are willing to innovate in these conditions as opposed to the value of the product, if that makes sense.
So if someone was listening to this right now and they're hearing your story and they're hearing about the platform, like what's that problem? What's that thing that would hook them and go, I need to speak to these guys?
Yeah.
What would be the kind of what could you say now where if they are experiencing it, they should absolutely kind of pick up the phone and get in contact?
Yes. If you're experiencing deal slippage and you feel like this is out of your control, you should get in touch with us because we're opening a new dimension of data points that you will never have using your own CRM systems. And we will solve it. There's two ways to solve predictability. The first thing is you can predict the close date and then stick to it and close the deal quickly enough so that you don't go over the close date. So that's an efficiency play.
Brilliant.
That's what we fixed. The second thing is, you know, when things are going wrong, and then you can put a plan together to address that, which is like a forecasting vision into the future kind of play as well, which we also fixed because the way we look at things is not singled out on a single project, is across the speed at which the business operates, like cohort progression, like all these things that you can't see within a deal.
Brilliant. And what is your ambition for this business? Where do you want to take it?
So I don't actually know. At the moment, we are very successful at what we're doing. I want to grow profitably. I've been in companies where you get a massive round of funding and then you've got 100 people on the floor and then 70% of them don't achieve. I don't think that's particularly healthy. I don't think that's where the market is going either in terms of valuation.
Agree.
So I want to have a healthy business with healthy people working in the business as well. And I think you can do just as well in terms of an exit or an acquisition if you've got a lower amount of revenue, but with very good business metrics, as opposed to a lot of revenue, but like very poor unit economics.
Cool. So kind of a long journey ahead to kind of navigate and explore. Just bringing it back to like sales and you know, you've obviously developed your own expertise. What is there a sales book that has had an impact on your career?
Yeah, I'm a slow reader, so I try to focus on the books that I get recommended as opposed to try my luck.
Yeah.
But Selling Above the Line, Skip Miller, I think for me was, I don't know, I hate saying this word, but it's quite revolutionary in the way I was actually thinking about progressing on opportunities. A lot of the books that you read about sales methodologies or productivity hacks, they're very conceptual. And I find it hard to then take the concept and apply to what I do because it feels like there's a massive gap between the ideal scenario they're speaking about and what you can do with it from like a day-to-day viewpoint. And when I read Selling Above and Below the Line, Skip Miller, he came up with actual tactics that you could just take and apply straight into your sales process, and like asking specific type of questions or how to close a call or like things that how to identify whether someone's got leverage internally or not, and taking this and applying it into your processes is just extremely simple. And yeah, we do a lot based on that book now.
Interesting. You've hired lots of salespeople in your career. What do you identify as traits that make great sales professionals?
Grit and persistency. I think a lot of sales leaders, which I don't think is right, are speaking about coachability. I want people that are coachable. Well, it's your role as a sales leader to make your team coachable. And if you don't bring any value to them, guess what? They're not gonna take your coaching. I don't see any decent salespeople reluctant to be coached. Like usually they've got skin in the game to improve their game because they make more money out of it. But if you can't convince them that what you're saying is right, they become uncoachable. Well, actually, no, you're just not really good at your job. So coachability, I don't think is the main issue here, but having their innate skills, characteristics like grit and like dedication, as we said, that you should hire for, because it's really hard to actually build if you don't have these skills to start with.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Look, you're at the forefront of kind of efficiency in sales. There's been a lot of hype going through the pandemic, hybrid working, remote working, lots of tools that have got salespeople access to, the debate around cold calling, prospecting, etc. Like, where do you see the future of sales going?
I think good salespeople will become greater, and I think poor salespeople will become worse. And I think that gap will just keep on getting bigger and bigger. Great salespeople, they're just aware of where the market is going and they're willing to give something a go for long enough so that they can see whether it works or not. Bad salespeople don't give it long enough for things to actually transform into an outcome. It could be negative, it could be positive, but they don't get into the mud for long enough to find out. And I think the gap is just going to keep on increasing. There's a second pattern happening where, because of the amount of information accessible nowadays, a lot of buyers don't actually want to speak to you too much. So when you do speak to someone, it has to be spot on. And you have to know what you need to speak about, how you prove the value, and how you move on to the next step. And again, that gap between good salespeople being able to orchestrate their deals and efficiently progress those deals will increase versus those that are bad at it.
Great point. I hadn't really considered, how the gap's increasing. It's interesting. There's always A players, B players, C players, right? But sometimes you've got to have that self-awareness to understand where you're really at. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind, and it's only going to become more difficult. So that's a good point. Obviously, sales confidence. We're about inspiring confidence in salespeople and sales leaders and founders. Like, where's your confidence come from to do what you've done? Sports background, then into the sales career, now a founder. Like where do you get your confidence to kind of strive?
I think I've seen very successful entrepreneurs with very big gaps in their games, and I think obviously there's a talent play and obviously there's a timing play as well, but I always see them and I'm like, if they can make it, why couldn't I make it? And my confidence comes from the fact that I won't let it fail because I got tired of it or because I got wounded on the way. Like, it doesn't matter if I get tens of thousands of paper cuts. And the confidence that I've got in my ability to stay in the mud, that's the main thing. The rest is just, as you said, self-awareness. And if you're able to stay in the mud and then be self-aware or have people helping you identify your gaps and accepting them, then it's just going through the process. It's just a matter of time really until you identify the problem, solve it, and then move on to the next problem, and so on.
Interesting. Have you had in your career, have you had some kind of like hardships, some major obstacles that you've had to overcome Like, how did you overcome it? If you're comfortable sharing, and like how's that allowed you to kind of progress through?
So I've been made redundant. I've been refused promotions. I think you need to have a support system which doesn't necessarily reside within your company. For me, it's my partner, my wife, my family, and it's like a safe place I can fall back on, and then kind of almost benchmark myself to what I was yesterday and what the market is saying. We've seen like massive waves again, like of layoffs. Like, does that mean you're bad at your job? Should you take it personally? It's hard. It's hard when you're in it. It's hard to kind of step back a little bit and then see the full picture. So the strength is in, I think, your trusted network, advisors, mentors. I find sales confidence for that to be really useful, because you're in a group of people who are self-aware. I think that's the main thing I find extremely good with sales confidence is you speak to people who are actually trying to get better at what they do, accepting feedback, actually are seeking feedback. And these people don't have any bias towards you. So, they give you the score.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I think, this is the challenge, like in any business, especially in larger businesses, there's politics, isn't there? There's bias. Like, you've got to be wary of what you might bring to the table. Is it going to influence how people see you down the line? And so, while there's an openness, often like that's a cultural value, transparency, and for a company, you still got to be smart about what you say. And I definitely think, you're right. Like on the sales confidence, like peer group circles and the dinners, it's just like, well, look, we don't work in the same business, so you can take it or leave it. But I've listened to what you've said, and maybe you should consider this as a different perspective or think, and that kind of challenge and perspective. And then of your course, what you mentioned there, having a family that you can actually like just to disconnect all the challenges that you're doing in your career and actually be like, look, this is I can forget about it and get away, is important. So it's good to hear that. What would be your advice to others that are, need lifting up or need to build their confidence?
Understand who's slapping you, like, and take it for what it's actually worth. I've had a lot of people giving criticisms, and then you look at their background, their street creds, and you're like, can you really give me this kind of feedback? Like, it's fair, I'll listen to it, but where is this coming from, and what have you done in order to be so adamant about what you're saying about me, which is negative at that point in time? So see who's giving you the feedback, and then deliberately choose to take it, explore it, or kind of put it aside. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is just know your worth. A lot of things are out of your control, and separate what's out of your control with versus what's within your control. Look at it. Can I control it? Okay, no, I can't. Move on. If you can't control it, don't spend time, like mental bandwidth on it. What you can control, do control.
Yes, great advice. Good reminders for people out there. So we're getting to the kind of final part of the conversation. You're juggling a lot right now, right? Lots of jobs, wearing lots of hats. You've got a young family. Like, how do you keep your well-being and health like on kilter? How are you looking after yourself?
Sports, work from home more. So we work from home most of the time. We meet in person about 3 times a month.
Yeah.
So the balance is up to you to manage. But because you're at home, I've got lunch with my kids. I take them, pick them up from school, and then I can work again afterwards. Or, I'm managing my own schedule without feeling guilty of not overworking or like having to do something on working hours, which often you get when you're employed. Sports, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like, whatever you do, find a way and stick to it on a schedule basis, like frequently enough to get rid of the stress, the anxiety, the anger, whatever you call it, and reduce the alcohol. Like there's quite a lot on. I'm trying to look after my diet now, and when I was younger, it was kind of like all over the place. I didn't really notice what the impact could have been if I had been healthier from a food viewpoint. So don't do too much coffee. Like it's hard with salespeople because moderation is quite hard to maintain.
Yeah,
It's like you're often like all in on everything.
You're
So
on the edge.
I moved from like 7 coffees a day to I can't do half. So to nothing at all. And yeah, like be mindful of that because this is impactful.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, look, I've loved hearing the journey that you've been on. Also, having such a successful sporting background, making that transition later on, picking up an SDR role at that stage was probably not an easy thing to do compared to your peers at the time. Then you've had an accelerated sales career. Now you founded this business that's impacting sales and revenue teams. I'm really excited to see how it's going to evolve and the opportunity you've got. I imagine people have got to this point in the conversation. Have you got like a final parting thought or comment or anything you want to shout out before we wrap up?
Product placement, but not for me, for you. There are communities that are built around self-improvement. Sales confidence, I think, is the leading one in the market. Investigate what's available. Get out of your own network. Speak to people who are also self-aware and into self-improvement. Those are the people you want to be surrounded by. And if you stick with the same 10 people you've always known and you're comfortable, obviously it's very important, but go speak to people who are in the same boat as you, maybe, in a different industry, and get a conversation going. Like most people are actually nice and they're happy to help without any trade-off. And that's what I find very successful and very rewarding with sales confidence is on a weekly basis, I don't have to go knock on the door and be annoying. Like it's scheduled. It's like a therapy session to some extent. It's like we speak about things, and yeah, some feedback is good. Some is maybe less relevant. Other like is actually spot on, but you need to have to get there in order to find out.
Definitely. Well, look, I appreciate that, and it's great that we're getting to kind of build this friendship and explore more. I'm really excited about what you're working on, and it's good to see these businesses coming out of like the UK, to be fair, and Europe, right, rather than just the US. So that's really exciting to hear. Thanks everybody for listening. You've been listening to the Sales Confidence podcast. Looking forward to connecting at one of our future events, and you can connect to learn more about our membership at salesconfidence.com. Good to have you on. Cheers,
Thank you, James.